which attracts British attention far more. And the great thing about Zambia is that it's never had a coup. All presidents losing elections have stepped down, starting with the great Kenneth Kaunda, who realised his time was up and stepped down, but remained very active. The Zambians tend to follow the constitution, and it also avoided, although it was surrounded by wars, Mozambique, Zimbabwe obviously, and Namibia over on the other, and then South Africa further south, and Congo to the north. Zambia has never been involved except as a peacekeeper. So I think this is a great country that is much neglected. Our guest was born in the south, a poor rural area, but got a scholarship to school and then to a place at Birmingham University where he got a degree in an MBA in finance and business strategy, and then set out on a terrific business path, becoming the CEO of Coopers & Lybrand, but never lost his rural roots, because you described yourself as a farmer. So I think this is not part of that urban elite that somehow dominate African politics. But he's also a philanthropist, has set up clinics and schools in Zambia, and has now challenged the president for the presidency 4 times. The margin has grown from 2008, when you got 19.7% of the vote. 2011 went down a little bit, 18.17%. But then, in the most recent one, just a couple of 1 or 2 percentage points just under the leader at 46.67%. So you absolutely and the margins are obviously very tight in Zambia. So we wish you luck for the next election. As I say, the next president of Zambia. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
All right. Would you like to stand there? Or yeah, that would be
okay. Good. Right. Good. Thanks. Right. Thank you very much, moderator. And I think it's my obligation to thank all of you for finding time to come to this presentation this evening. I know you're all busy, have lots of important things to do, but you've decided to be here, so thank you so much. I want to thank the Royal African Society for accommodating us here, and my handler, Henry, for taking me around a couple of meetings in London. I shall not waste your time. I have been asked to speak on a couple of issues, but I want to focus on a few this evening. And I want to start from an area where I'm really, and I love starting from when I'm given an opportunity to make a presentation like this one. Basically, Zambia, as many of us know, is a land of opportunity, huge opportunities in many respects, in terms of resource endowments, minerals, the water, soils, arable soils. The story is known to many of you seated in this room today. But Zambia lives with a paradox, or in a paradox. A rich country on one hand, and then poor people on another. I mean, that's a contradiction, that's a paradox. And I think it's a very important issue for me or area to start from in this presentation. And the question is that why would you continue having so much poverty in a country that is so rich, that God bless so much? And I think the question and the issue is why we're trying to seek public office is to answer, to solve that paradox. And that is an issue of leadership. The quality of leadership in Zambia today is really leaves much to be desired. And it has failed the people of Zambia time and again. And it's not different from many African countries, which have similar resource endowments and potential, but have not realized this potential to benefit the population. In our case, we're just 14 million people, frankly speaking. I'm not sure the population of London as we see today here. But the whole of Zambia has only 14 million people. If you want, you can load and say 15 million people, 16 million people. It's still a small population. And we cannot be doing anything, things that are right, if people of this small population remain poor. And for us, in the UPND, for me, is Hakainde Hichilima. You can call me HH, it's easier because my name is long. I think this is really the challenge of leadership in Zambia today. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about economic management and governance and maybe one or two more things which are all connected to our situation in Zambia. You know, leadership today must all be to do with the economic turnaround, focusing on the economy. The language of politics must not be different from that of business. It's no question about it. So we're not freedom fighters. We were not there. What can we do when we take leadership positions? Is to turn around the economies. Is look at the economic performance under the PF. The economy clearly under the PF is underperforming. We can check or look at a few parameters. Unemployment levels are very, very high today as we see it. Those of you who are following Zambia know that only a few weeks ago or a week ago, a couple of young graduates who left college and have not found jobs staged a small demonstration. And I think they're still in the cells today. They shouldn't be in the cells. I think they're delivering a message. They're looking for opportunity. They're looking for employment. They can't get employment. Let's look at the debt position. Just a few parameters. Many of you remember, a few years ago, Zambia, like many African countries, went through a debt relief effort. Jubilee 2000, those of you whose memories are still fresh. You know, lots of pain that workers went through in the country to achieve debt relief. And I think under the late President Mwanawasa, that was achieved. And 3 years of our colleagues in leadership in PF, the debt burden has returned. As we stand today, we have a debt position. For you, maybe in this big economy, it's not that much, but things are always in relative terms. We are standing now at over $8 billion of domestic and foreign debt put together. And most of this foreign debt has been acquired under the PF leadership only in the last 3 years. Now, I think you are well aware that the rating agent Fitch has downgraded Zambia, basically raising questions about Zambia's ability to service this debt, let alone to pay it back. And one of the reasons that this is the case is that the debt that is acquired, in our view, is not being applied in the productive areas. It's not being applied in areas or sectors that will generate capacity to service the debt. And those who are in business understand that if you're doing business in Zambia and the government is borrowing, is not really properly accounting for its debt, it means that you and your businesses will have to pay this debt back. By implication, there will be some increase in your tax obligations along the way. But we're still for the generations to come. Now, this obviously means that the money we should use to apply in need areas in education and health, a good portion of it will end in the debt service. I think these are issues. If you look at the domestic debt situation, we are sitting in a position where government, in my view, in our view, in the UPND, is going into the market to issue paper, to borrow, basically, money which should be basically borrowed by business. If the government increases its appetite to borrow in the domestic market, I don't want to use the normal, usual term, but maybe let me use it, crowds out private investment. And you're not talking about a market that has a lot of excess cash. No, that's not true. So these are the difficulties that we are faced with today. Policy issues. Our colleagues in government have demonstrated their incapacity to provide a clear vision, clear policy choices. A menu of choices are available to every government. I think the choice of which policies to put in place is very important. I'll give an example. Not long ago, the PF introduced a monetary policy instrument, which came via what we call in Zambia statutory instruments, statutory instrument 33, if I'm not mistaken. And the effect of this monetary policy instrument was basically to create restrictions in the foreign exchange market. One of the effects or intended effects was to actually restrict foreign exchange inflows. You cannot do that in an import-dependent economy. If you understand what an import-dependent economy is, you cannot introduce a measure that may be of value in an export-led economy. You can't do that. And I think the consequence of that was the damage to the local currency, the kwacha. In the last couple of months, the kwacha has depreciated up to somewhere in the region of 20%. If you know the Zambian economy well, it means putting pressure on the pricing levels, the cost of living, food, for example. Now, some of the people in our country survive on trading to feed their children, and it means that it's more difficult for them to provide food for their children, basic food. I'm not talking about complicated things that you people are used to in London. So these are the issues, these are the areas of economic underperformance. And for us in the UPND, for me, these are serious issues. I can go on to talk about things that you may heard about. Right now, at the time I left Zambia on Saturday to arrive on Sunday, were fuel shortages. That, for a small economy, which has knowledge, for the economic managers who have knowledge of the consumption levels of fuel, we shouldn't be in those situations. By the way, you are all aware that only until recently, the price of fuel was adjusted downwards. The price of fuel, basically for us who buy fuel, countries that buy fuel, is supposed to be cheaper, much cheaper than before. But there are distortions in the management of our economy that do not allow these benefits to trickle to consumers of fuel. And the effect is not, there's no need to belabor the point. The cost of fuel is high, and the shortages, the consequences are clear. They're not. So I think these are some of the issues I wanted to touch on. So the country needs a different culture, approach in leadership. Political leadership whose focus must be to turn around the economy. Clear vision, quality choices or policies, institutional systems to implement these chosen policies. Of course, if anyone today in Africa and Zambia is looking for the presidency, the only credential, the only burning point is that of managing the economy. Because many people argue that you need to look at the social side of the equation. How can you support the social side of the equation? How will you support the sick and the weak and the vulnerable if your economy is dysfunctional? It's not possible. And I use the word in Zambia that you cannot redistribute poverty. It's not possible, even with good intentions. So, really, if the young graduates are asking for jobs, their demands are no different from a business house that is asking for a stable, credible, attractive business operating environment. Because the two actually are talking to each other. Because if you don't have that environment, you will not support the businesses that are there to survive. You will not allow the business to grow. If the business don't grow, the jobs are not there. So the young people are asking for the same things that business houses are asking. But look at what's happening in the mining sector today. The PF introduced a mineral loyalty to solve a problem, identified problem that some mines were not paying their due taxes. Fair enough, agreed. But the solution did not lie in introducing a mineral loyalty of 20% for open cast mines, 8% for underground mines. That's not the solution. Because that measure constitutes a turnover tax which does not recognize the cost of production. Mine A and mine B, both of which are open cast mines, it's not true to say that their cost structures are similar. They're not. So I think that's a simplistic approach that does not help the economy. As we see today, we have mines that are threatening to scale down their operations, even to go into care and maintenance. Those of you in the mining sector know that, for example, the mine I have in mind, I won't mention the name, if it goes into care and maintenance, because the government has failed to resolve this issue of the mineral loyalty, 4,000 mining direct jobs will be lost. That's not all. There are other jobs, mine contractors, suppliers, which will also shed jobs. For us in the UPND, it cannot happen like that. First, that policy measure will have never been introduced because we would have looked at the implications of such a measure. And if by mistake it was introduced, if we went into office, we were allowed to be in office after the 20th of January elections, it would have been top on the agenda. And by now, I think we would have reached a resolution. Because we share common interest between the businesses and the political side. Huge difference here. So, I think these are the matters I wanted to comment on the economic performance. There are other issues that I won't waste time on. The need to maintain macro stability, interest rates, inflation as a cost, but that is boring. Sorry?
But important.
Very important. Very important. Because otherwise, how do you improve the business operating environment, investment operating environment, if interest rates are not stable, they're not affordable, if inflation, which is a cost to doing business, is high? And those of you who live in Zambia or who have operations in Zambia know the domestic rates of interest. They're very high, extremely high. And I've talked about the exchange rate already. And I gave you a test of some of the monetary policy instruments that should have never seen the light of day. But they're there. So, let me touch a little bit on governance. Governance is extremely important. The rule of law, if you like, is a partner to the issues I talked about. We have a situation in Zambia where the interpretation of certain laws create restrictions to individual liberties and freedoms. Public Order Act is an example in point at the moment, where the law is reasonably clear, especially the amendments that were made to this law, which allows everyone, including Hakainde, to be able to meet people like you and talk to each other. But many of you are aware that that's not the case in Zambia. There are limitations to freedoms, to rights, human rights, assembly, movement. I don't like using my example. 3 years of the 3 years government, I've been detained 9 times. And some of the times, I'm detained for speaking. Of course, I have different opinions, as I've expressed to you already, on a number of areas. But that's my democratic right. That's our democratic right. Journalists, if their rights infringed upon, houses of worship get restricted sometimes. So this environment is not good for business. The due process of the law must be applied. Constitution. We were promised the Constitution by our colleagues in PF that they would deliver the Constitution in 90 days. That was the 2011 campaigns. In 90 days. But it's taken them 1,128 days to deliver it. We're still challenged by the Constitution. And the importance of the Constitution, in this case, are issues in there that include, for example, the draft Constitution, having a presidential running mate. When you are unlucky, as we are as a country, to have 2 sitting presidents passing on in 6 years, creating a situation where you have, in 6 years, 3 presidential elections. You can imagine the cost. You can imagine the digression in attention from necessary areas of attention, education, health, agriculture. You can imagine just the confusion that's associated with elections. And how is it that we can't fix this issue and create savings that would apply elsewhere and not in elections? This issue sits in the Constitution. We don't have it yet. I don't think we'll have it before the 2016 elections. And we'll be getting to 25, 30 years of constitution making. Less complicated than South Africa post-apartheid. But we're not there. These are issues of governance, rule of law, freedoms, liberties, which are all associated with areas of democratic space, democratic competition, economic space, entrepreneurship. Someone will say, how are they connected? They're very, very connected, extremely connected. Moderator, I don't want to bore you anymore with these issues. Let me move to the next steps. For us in the UPND, for me and friends and supporters, life opportunities in Zambia are very bright. But we have to go through a process. We have to get the quality of leadership that the country deserves to solve that paradox I started talking about in the beginning of rich country, poor people. We believe we have the momentum. We demonstrated that in the last elections, 20th of January, 2015. The moderator said that we came close. We believe we were there, but we were eased out. It took 5 days to get to know the winner. I mean, less than 3 million people turned out to vote. It took 5 days. and the issues that arose in that electoral process. And that's why, again, we want a new constitution that provides for an independent electoral commission, a truly independent electoral commission that can ensure transparent, free and fair election, transparent, not just in the announcement of results, but in the recording, in the tallying, in the transmission of results. So, but we believe the momentum is there for us. At a turnout of 32%, we were able to achieve the nearest 47%, and for us, 48% for the winner. The one announced as winner. But we did not go into the streets. We asked our people to remain calm. Because the country is more important than Hakainde. The stability of the country, peace in our country is more important than Hakainde. But it's also true to say that voters must get the decision that they've made through the ballot box. Very important. Going forward, we believe that in an election situation in Zambia, by-election, the history books say that no one gains votes. No one. You all lose votes, the winner is the one who loses less votes. But in this election, we gained, in absolute terms, somewhere in the region of 273,000 votes. MMD lost votes. MMD is the former ruling party. PF lost over 300,000 votes. So the scales are that we're going up, everyone else is going down. We can push the turnout to 50%. Many of you will say, why 50%? Zambians are fatigued of voting because the attraction, and I really feel bad about this point, that we all close together that we are bad guys. Everybody in politics is a bad guy. It's not true, because we seek politics for different reasons. To serve, to better the economy, better the social welfare. So we believe with a higher turnout, getting people, push them to go and vote, protecting our votes much better than we did. 16 months time will be there. And when we are there, we'll focus on the economic side of the question to support the social side of the question. That's our story. Thank you very much.